Perfect. All right, we're recording now. Thanks everybody for joining us tonight, the Michigan chapter of Backcountry Hunters and Anglers. Tonight we're doing a Pint Night with Jared Walker from Flint Ridge Rifles. We're going to start off, Jared's going to go through basically how he goes through and builds a rifle. And then we're going to work down some rabbit holes with calipers and accessories and scopes like that. If you have any questions during this part of the video tonight, please throw it down in the chat and we'll try to catch them as we go. And then towards the end of the event tonight, we'll open it up and I'll unmute everybody and then we can do a forum and you can ask any questions that you have there at the end. So Jared, I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right, cool. Thanks, Austin, and thanks everybody for attending. Appreciate, BHA letting me hop on and do this. Something that I'm obviously passionate about, and hopefully you guys can take some nuggets from it. A little bit about like what we do. Like I said, I'm Jared Walker, owner of Flint Ridge Rifles. I'm in Howell, Michigan, and so the way we're actually a family business. It's me and my dad, they operate Flint Ridge. And if you look at it, like I'm kind of like the face of everything, right? I'm the guy that's typically your trigger man that's also setting up your ammo or whatever. That's make sure that your guns are set up, ready to, the optics mounted right before they go to our customers. My dad's on the backside. He's the gunsmith behind the operations, right? He's the guy that's down there with the brass tacks, making sure that we're all sweating the details, but like we put our heart and soul into these things. And if you buy one of our rifles, that it's probably not going to be the fastest build coming out, but it's intentional because like every one of them's built one at a time. And I feel like too, like through the process, we build a relationship with every customer, right? And that's really that, kind of kick into how these whole things go. Somebody reaches out to me and is curious about a build. One of the things we do is I like to have a conversation with that customer, asking about like, what is it their intended purpose, right? We all know we want a rifle that's going to be accurate, right? But what I like to ask is, what do you think your 80% is going to be? Meaning like, where do you see yourself using this most often? Okay. If you think that you're going to be primarily whitetail hunting, then I'm probably going to go down a path of one of our, models that leans more towards something that's probably closer range or what have you, or things like that. Or just like from a setup perspective. If you said, I want a dedicated elk hunting rig that I can reach out and, go canyon to canyon with, right? Then I'm going to like, okay, that sounds good. If that's what you're wanting, then we go down that path. And then from there, like if you say, I think I want something that I can mule deer hunt and then every once in a while elk hunt with, right? Then we're going to have conversations around that. I will ask about materials, right? And ultimately too, I ask about what's the budget, right? Because that is very important around like a build is, I don't want somebody coming to me that says, I want X, Y, and Z. And then they said, I got a $1,200 budget. And I'm just gonna be like, what I'm going to then do is say like, I appreciate it, or may not be where you need to be, but I'll tell you what I can do. I can steer you in the right direction of doing the right things for that. And we may not be the one building it. That's fine, right? But if you've got the budget and we're in that range, by all means, I want to go through this whole process with you. So like I said, let's just go through an example right now. I get somebody that calls me up and says, hey, I think that I'm going to start going out west, right? And I'm looking to build a rifle that I want to hunt elk. This is something that I want to do, right? I said, okay, you're going to hunt elk. That's great. Do you intend on shooting factory ammunition, or do you think you're going to hand load, right? Because this also, that question then gears me towards like two ways. If they're going to hand load, I might steer them down towards potentially maybe a more like hot rod cartridge or something that may be more obscure, not obscure, but like, that may be different versus saying, I don't intend on hand loading. And I'll tell you that a good chunk of the time, if somebody says, I don't intend on hand loading, then I say, okay, I'm going to go back to some of the tried and trues because like they all still shoot well. I'm probably going to lean folks into saying, okay, a 300 Win Mag or a 7 Mag. Okay, for somebody that says I want to go out west. Typically for me, if somebody says they're going to primarily going to be hunting elk, I'm going to start 7mm and higher. Okay, and that's where I'm going to kind of look. And the reason why I do that is because there's a wide array of a good selection of bullets for those intended purposes of going out west. Okay. Now, somebody says, this is my elk rig. I'm probably going to lean more towards something a 30 caliber. Okay. And that's why I say like a 300 Win Mag is such a tried and true round. It's been around for a while. And let's say in a non-pandemic crazy situation, you can go into any gas station, any sporting goods store, whatever, hardware store, and you're probably going to be able to find 300 Win Mag ammo on the shelf, right? So let's say you've got that box of that Hornady Precision Hunter 200 grain ELDX, and that's the load that I've been buying from Cabela, Sportsman's, wherever, and it just, man, it's tack driver. Well, I was flying from here to wherever it is. The airline lost my ammo, right? Well, let's just say I had to go in someplace and I'm like, well, the only thing they got on the shelf is 180 grain partition bullets. Fine, who cares? You know what? Take that thing, throw it down the tube. You need to re-zero your gun and you're ready to go hunt, right? Now, if that's a big difference between something where like you were shooting a round that I really like a 280 Ackley, right? It's a very good round, awesome round, but you're not going to find it in every, from availability of ammunition, it doesn't have as wide an array, right? So those are pieces that we would walk through as far as like calibers and whatnot. Now, if somebody then said, I'm going to be mostly a deer hunter, right? And then I'm going to ask, okay, where do you think you're going to deer hunt at? And if it's deer hunting with I might once in every 10 years go hunt elk, then I may say 7 Mag, or where I might be teeter-tottering towards a 6.5 is if they said I want a mule deer round or something like that, then I may be leaning towards let's say a 6.5 PRC. A new one that we're going to be starting to build for right now too is the 6.8 Western, right? Which is essentially it's a 270 WSM with the shoulder set back. So you're shooting a high, a high BC 277, caliber bullet. Whereas like deer hunters, pieces like that, then I could say like you could shoot a 6.5 Creedmoor, a 6mm Creedmoor, and honestly too, like look at a 308, look at stuff like that, right? Like there's so many good. Once again, I'm going to availability of ammunition, some of these other pieces, but some of these rounds are also too inherently accurate, right? So, all right, let's just say we decide on whatever caliber it is, we do that, okay? We choose that, say, you're going to hand load, not hand load, okay? If you're going to hand load, then it's great right now. I've got like, I see Jim sitting up here right now, like we're doing a build for him right now in the moment, right? So I've got his 300 Win Mag sitting here right beside me. And I've been working through, he said, I'd like to be able to shoot a solid copper, right? So what we've been doing is we've been working up loads with a 180 grain triple shock bullet, right? That's a very good round. Barnes makes a very good solid copper, right? So now what we're in the process of going through is I was trying to optimize what's the right powder, right? So this gets into this whole tuning and hand loading and all this other stuff. But when we're done, Jim's going to have a load that is tuned for his gun and everything. And then what I do is I record all that data, right, around those loads. So if he comes back and says, hey, I need X, Y, and Z later, we could flip the switch and say, all right, here's a new batch, right? He saves his brass. He could ship his back, let's say wherever you are in the country, you could ship your brass back to me. and I could load your brass again and then ship your ammunition back to you. So that's the beauty of once you get a load tuned to your rifle, you're in the next level is what you're getting to there, right? So from an accuracy standpoint and whatnot, that's the beauty of it. Now I am going to use, sorry, Jim, I'm going to pick on you a lot because you just happen to be a live example and I see you sitting out there. So Jim's cousin, Ron, we've been working through a build for him too, right? So we've got a 300 Win Mag that we're working on for him right now. Now, talking through the conversation that I had with Ron, we got to talking about weight, right? This is always going to be one of those considerations that people want to talk about. What's the appropriate weight? I can tell you that super lightweight rifles and magnums don't like to date each other always. Okay, it's just not the way things go together. So if you want to build a 5-pound, 5.5-pound rifle, you don't need to put a fire breathing dragon of a cartridge to it, because I can tell you right now in the field, it's great on your shoulder and whatnot. But the hard part is steadying that rifle in the moment. Okay. So I think there's a fine line balance between weight, and then one of the pieces that I really like is how well does it balance? Okay. Because you could take a gun that could, in theory, be scoped out around, let's say, 9 pounds. Okay. That may seem like a lot. It's not really a lot, guys, because if we rewind the clock to what most of us, let's say, that grew up 80s, 90s, whatever, like the guns that we were going into the field with all the time were 10-pound guns, guys. So like if it had a wood stock and a barrel and all that stuff, those guns weighed, without a scope, a lot of times 8 pounds. And then you start putting scope, and then you do all the other stuff. So people are honestly quite used to having and carrying 10-pound rifles. Now, something else too, if you shave an entire pound off a gun on a build, that's a lot. That is like a whole lot of weight if you think about what you're getting into. So that leads me down to the next piece when we start talking is the material components of our stock. So we offer 3 different actions, okay? And we use, so Defiance Machine out of Montana, they OEM our actions for us, okay? So we have 3 different variations. We have the Ridge Runner, which is the Defiance Tenacity action. We have the Bomber, which is a Defiance Ruckus action, which is more of the octagon shape. And then we have our Ascent, which is the Defiance Anti. Okay. Our Ascent action is going to be one of the lightest weight non-titanium actions on the market. Okay. That is an action that's going to weigh in the ballpark of 21 to 22 ounces, whereas a normal action is going to weigh probably around 32 ounces. Okay. So you can just see how much shaving 10 ounces off, what that does. Now, in that process, there's pieces of the action that have been skeletized. So like any areas where it does not degrade the integrity of the action, those areas have been milled out, right? So you'll see relief cuts in the action. The bolt handle has been hollowed out. There's pieces like that, right? So if weight is the utmost important thing, then what we would do is probably say, pick the action. So one thing that I tell folks too is like any one of our actions pretty much can go with any one of the other stock combinations, right? Now, if you want to try to pick the most lightweight stock and the most lightweight action, that's where I'm probably going to have to get the reality check or whatever thing. And you're hitting the realm now of it. You're about to get really uncomfortable. And that's just what I'm saying. Like the shootability of this may not be desirable, but just know that's where you're kind of heading. Okay. So we get into the pieces too around, like I said, the materials.
Jared, I do have a quick question on lightweight rifles from Tucker. If you got time.
Yeah.
So he's interested in building an ultra lightweight rifle. So below 5 pounds before optics, and either 7.8 or 338 federal. What's your thought on that?
are you wanting to do, and I don't know if Tucker, he can come off mute here too, right? So say, are you thinking more in this scenario? Are you looking for deer? Or are you thinking that 338 Federal being more kind of like a black bear type thing too? Because inherent, like you got to think too, it's the same basic case, right? So you've got essentially all those two are basically variations of the 308 case, one being neck down, one being necked up, right? In the 338 Federal. My personal thing, if it was me, I'd build a 708. Just because in the 708, I can drop down and shoot 139 grain bullet, an SST 129, something in that caliber, and get super zippy. And then I can even drop down if I wanted to and shoot 110 grain bullet in that same case if I want to use it as a varmint rig, right? Subsequently, I could put 150 grain ELDX bullet in that and go take an elk if I wanted to, jump up to a 162 grain ELDX. Now, and that's where I'm probably going to start topping out on that 708 case, is that 160 grain class. But you can take anything in North America within reason with that. You jump up to the 338. That's when you start getting into, you're shooting essentially a lower BC 180 grain type bullet in a 338. It's where you're starting, right? It's not going to have the juice to push the 200, the 225s necessarily versus saying like a 338 Win Mag would. So, but if you were looking at a dedicated, like I want something to hunt black bears in the timber with, I would go 338. But if you think it's going to be something where like I might want to take on a sheep hunt, I'm going to go 708. So, and then it's going to be a beauty to shoot because that 708 in here doesn't have a lot of recoil. And yeah, if you think about that, you could easily get, I'm just saying like right now, like just spec'd out parts of one that we're going to start building here before too long. I mean, we're looking at, it's 6 pounds before optics, right? And that's with a 24-inch barrel. You could cut that barrel length down a little bit more too, if you wanted to, and be around, let's say 22 to 20 inches. You're going to give up a little bit of velocity, but you're going to save some weight there too. So component wise, then like I said, you're next thing you know, you're sub 6 pounds right there. So that's light. I'm telling you right now, as far once you get into that, then then you're looking at setting the right optic on it, right? So, and this is one of my kind of like pet peeves, and we can kind of talk the optic piece or whatever, but if you're building a gun that light, don't go put a Night Force scope on there that weighs 2 pounds. Okay. Like I see folks that do that stuff all the time. Like you're going to take a super lightweight gun and you put a almost 3 pound optic on there. Right. So think about what is your end game, right? Of what you're trying to get out of this, and then work your end game backwards in your fit of your build. Right. So I think that's where I'd go, Ryan, probably something like that. Just thinking.
And I did unmute you, Tucker, if you have any questions.
Oh, I was going to ask about twist rate too. Would you go towards the higher if with a 7.8? Would you go faster just so you can stabilize those 160s and 150s?
Yeah, I'd go 1 1/8 twist. So I mean, our standard is going to just pretty much be 1 1/8 twist in everything we do. Just the reason being is, I don't know what it is about that magic number, but 1 1/8 in any caliber can stabilize just about the heaviest stuff out there, right? So a 1 1/8 in a 6mm can stabilize all the way up to 115 grain bullet. In the 6.5, easily a 156, 7mm all the way up to a 195, 250 in a 308, and 300 and a 330. So like you've got the range there. Now we have gone faster before on, let's say, like some varmint rigs, right, where something like that, where is dedicated. I know I'm going to shoot only a super long bullet in one, like a 6mm Creedmoor. We did one in a 1 7 twist, only because it was just going to be basically a trainer for shooting like heavy stuff, right? I think that the 1 and 8 is a good all-purpose, and I think that's a excellent question because it was one of the things that I wanted to talk about too. Is we're kind of in the golden age right now, I think, of rifle development and calibers and bullets and pieces like that, right? You know, you think not even 10 years ago, rifle twist weights were not where they are today, right? And more rifle manufacturers have recognized that, and they're going to faster twists. That's the beauty of a fast twist, right? Now, you could go like if you're in a 300 Win Mag, a 7 mag, you know, you can get by with a 1 and 9, right? And I'll be honest too, Ryan, like for most folks in a 308, I tend to go 1 and 10. And the reason why I do that is it doesn't really make a lot of sense to me to shoot a 225 grain bullet in a 308, right? Like 308s in a heavy is topping out about a 180, right? So you might see some Sierra Match King stuff that's 190, but it can still stabilize in the 1 and 10. So that's kind of where like twist rates, yes, that always becomes a good conversation thing to, you know, to walk through. So, but I would say like most of the builds that we do are, and I'm even looking at our 30s to kind of just switching it over to a 1 and 8 twist, right? So because they're two, so the 300 PRC and the 300 Win Mag, like if you started looking at those, you know, comparing those two cartridges, if I could easily talk somebody into a 300 PRC round if they say, I want to be able to shoot practicing out to a mile. Practicing. I didn't say hunting, I said practicing, right? Because they load with the factory a 225 grain match grade bullet, right? Currently, that's not offering in a 300 Win Mag. A 300 Win Mag, you can hand load it, no doubt, right? If you hand load them, I mean, it's yin or yang. I mean, I'm sorry, like you're getting the same thing. So, yeah. All right. Okay. So we talked. We're neck deep caliber things. So we're going to come back. We're going to hit some more caliber stuff here after a while. But okay, we decide action. You've given me a weight kind of thing that you're thinking about. Stocks. Okay. Most of the time we use stocks from Manners and AG Composites. Mesa Precision also is who we work with too. Mesa stocks are actually made by AG, and I've worked directly with Mesa to come up with color options that are specific to us that you won't see on the websites. So like I was mentioning with Ron's build, right? So I'll kind of step back here. So this is a 300 Win Mag. It's got a 24-inch barrel with a Hawkins Precision muzzle brake. The barrels we've been using, and it's kind of hard to tell, but like I've worked with Lee Freeman, who owns Oregon Mountain Rifles, and we've been super impressed with their carbon fiber barrels. And we're saving you $200 to $250 over a proof barrel, and you're still getting carbon fiber. So I've seen these barrels are tack drivers, so they've done really well, done very well with saving weight as well. So this gun, 300 Win Mag, came out unscoped at 7.5 pounds, right? So it's got a carbon fiber stock, but it's got, like I said, it's got the heavier action, right? So if you were to take this exact same gun and you built it on our anti or the Ascent action, right? They'll shave a full 10 ounces off this thing, and this gun's a 6.5. You know what I mean? So then you're getting that 6 3/4. So that's pretty light, right? But I will say that too. Once you get into that and you start shooting a 200 grain bullet, it's going to have some snap to it. Not gonna lie. So just things to think about, right? Because ultimately it's shootability and how well these things handle, right? In the field, you wouldn't hardly notice it. Where you'd notice it is if you're sitting on the bench, right? You're laying down prone and you're in an awkward position. even with the brake, you can still scope yourself. You just got to be, you got to be careful. But I mean, I say that you have to have your eye like right here up next to the scope. I mean, you got to be really close. These things don't move that much as far as like recoil. I also asked too, are you going to, most of the time we're looking at a hinged floor plate. We use Hawkins Precision bottom metals. They're it's in what's called an Obendorf style bottom metal. They're able to absorb a ton of recoil, even though we're probably going to have it, but it could absorb that recoil without having your bottom floor plate potentially release. I have seen magnums before where the hinge may not grab or something, like under pressure, it could cause your floor plate to open. So I have seen that happen before, and that's part of the reason why we made a switch to the Hawkins. They're great. And in some instances, it allows you to be able to potentially get an extra round in your magazine. So that's another benefit of looking at a Hawkins style. All right, so we've gone through the gun, we've gone the other pieces, we've talked through ammo. Then we get into discussion about like optics, right? What do you plan on doing? Once again, I tend to say if you're mostly going to be hunting in the east and you might go out west, I really like the 4 to 16 zoom range, especially for the east. Like if you're east Mississippi, if you're going to be using a gun west, I really like a 6 to 24. Just because like if you're shooting, I mean, it's not uncommon to have shots 300-400 yards out there at west, 500 yards, right? Or you're just looking out farther. I mean, you think about when you're out hunting elk, sometimes you're glassing stuff 2 miles away, right? But if you wanted to use your scope to look through, that 24 does give you a little bit more, zoom out there. And two, you don't have to shoot on max power, right? So what you're probably going to do is you're going to have you could go all the way up to max if you want. You can back that thing down to 16 power, which would be the topped out of the other scope I just mentioned, and have a little bit more field of view as well. Now, and then, I mean, I may be a little bit partial just because of like the way we set up some of the stuff, but I'm also a Zeiss dealer too. So like a lot of our builds we do a Zeiss, and then I do package deals as well, just because if you're doing a whole thing together. But if you don't want to do that, like I like Leupold. There's some good there's some good Vortex ones out there too. Like if you're looking at a Vortex, I just tell folks that like start at the Viper and go up. You know what I mean? On a lot of the builds, like start at the HST and then move up, or the HSLR, and then move up from there. Just the components and the quality of the glass, I feel like it's that much better. Leupold, I would say that one of the best bang for the buck scopes out there, it's not cheap, is the VX5 3 to 15-44 with the CDS ZL2 turret with a Winplex. Man, you want to talk about another one that's an excellent scope, right? And I mean, all these scopes too that I'm talking about are they are second focal plane versus first, being that with the second focal plane is what most of us have primarily been used to, and versus the on a first focal plane, that the image gets magnifies in your reticle larger as you go down, right, versus the object that you're looking at. One of the, and then also too, where at first focal plane, if you're thick in the timber, sometimes it's very hard to pick up your reticle. That's another thing too. If you think you want to build a rig that you want to go shoot PRS with, then I'm going to tell you to get a first focal plane, just because you need to be able to do adjustments in your turret, in your image on the spot. And then with the first focal plane too, the sub tensions in the reticle, it doesn't matter if you're on 5 power or 25 power, those sub tensions are the same. Versus a second focal plane scope, typically your sub tensions are only accurate at the max magnification rates. So just something to think about, with scopes. But most of the time, hunting scopes, we're all used to that second focal plane, and like I've used both I was using first. I've actually gone back to second, just from what I prefer to use in the field. Like I said, personal preference. Okay. All right, so we've talked through the guns, we've talked through some optic pieces. Oh, on the optics too. A couple of things that I like to talk about are, do you want a Picatinny rail, right? Or do you want like a single piece scope rings? These are all, I know it may seem like a lot, but these are the nitty gritty things that, you know, I typically will get into when it comes to, because some of these things can shave weight. If you think you want to be able to have the ability to take that scope and swap it over to other guns, then I would consider running a pick rail, because then you could take that same scope, swap it over, re-zero, and then you go that route. Versus typically when you do the other rings, which would be more like this. These are Hawken Precision rings, right? Where this is mated to this. Every time I take it off, you're going to have to take it, re-zero, do whatever. But this combination's mated together. I have no desire to change it. So it's going to stick that route. So with the weight pieces too, some things to think about are some of your accessories, bipods, right? This is the one that most people know and are used to. That's your Harris style bipod. And most of the ones too, like anymore, like if it's worth its weight, and it's going to have a anti-cant or a pivot to it, right? The piece, there's pros and cons. They're affordable, super easy to use. Some of the cons, they pretty much, it stays fixed to your rifle, right? When you're in the field, you don't have a quick detach method or something like that. Weight wise too, it's also going to be your heaviest option typically that's out there. This one weighs 15 ounces, right? So just sticking your bipod typically will add almost a pound to your gun. So just food for thought. One of the next ones that I'm going to look at here is this is an Atlas bipod. The Atlas has little notches here where you can go back and forth. And then there's also some anti-cant built in. Inside here, you get a quick detach lever. So that can either stay fixed to your rifle, or if you chose, you could stick this thing in your pack, and if you got to where you're hiking in, you could stick it on when you got there. No big deal. You can stick it on in a matter of a couple seconds. Weight wise, this was about 13 ounces. So it's a couple ounces lighter than the Harris. The Rugged Ridge outdoor bipods, the carbon fiber ones, they weigh the exact same as this guy. So they're both 13 ounces. So I've shot both. I just happen to prefer the Atlas, especially if I'm shooting a Magnum. Okay, that's where, because of the load feature of, like, I can push forward in this, and it really helps me track on my target. Something else too, this thing's got real quick legs. I can be up and down in no time as far as like height adjustments. Couple ones that are super slick that I really like if you want to go lighter weight and like that are super neat are the Spartan Precision, the Javelin bipods. These things are like the bee's knees when it comes to like on and off. It's pretty amazing. So this is a rare earth magnet, and what's cool here too is with this, to get this guy, all you do is, and you're ready to go, and it's that fast. And then in the field, you just take this guy, snap it off, put the thing back in. So you guys saw that, it's just like, I'm ready to shoot. This one happens to be one of the original. That is an adjustable. The newer versions have got, I think it's called the TAC Pro, a little bit more now, but as far as adjustability, most of the time too on this one. So that guy weighs 5.4 ounces, right? So look at how much more weight you're shaving off. This guy weighs 4.6 ounces. And this is another javelin. This is the standard. And then, but the thing is with this, it's more of a fixed height, right? Versus the adjustability. Where you might use this is, yes, you've got a good position on the ground. The other area too is potentially you could rest this off of a pack if you had a very good method to go with on like being stable, right? So you could use it both ways. Another cool feature about the javelin setup is you don't have to really make any modifications to your stock. The adapter on the end of goes into your swivel stud. Right from there, if you don't want to use it, you can take it off. You can put your swivel stud back on, which is kind of neat. Whereas some of the other ones on the market, you typically may have to drill and tap into the stock, or it's basically say like some of the Picatinny rails, or you're using it's a much larger pick rail adapter that you get into for doing that. Yeah, so. All right, there's some accessories, bipods. Let's see here. Talked about weights. So let's talk about, here's a fun one, okay? And then maybe we could open up, let's see if we want to or not, go on mute or not. Let's talk about why 6.5 Creedmoor is not the end all be all cartridge in the world, okay? And here's my thing. Yeah. So if you want to put it in the chat thing, just throw them in. And I'm going to go through this from an example of saying, let me first say, I have nothing against the 6.5 Creedmoor in its inherent design. Okay. This design of the cartridge is excellent. Okay. My problem with the 6.5 Creedmoor is what people have done with a round that was with its not intended purposes, right? This is an excellent round, okay, for punching paper and for ringing steel at long distances, okay? What's happened over time is people think just because I can ring steel at 800 to 1,000 yards, they think that it immediately translates into the ability to take an elk at that distance. And I just want to say, like, do people do it? Yeah. But check yourself, guys, because like this bullet, right? What I did here was I seeded 140 grain burger bullet out. And I'm trying to think the best way to say this is you've got a bullet that's going to be traveling basically 2,800 feet per second, right? And in a 6.5 caliber, the diameter of that bullet. So what I've done here too is I went ahead and grabbed, okay, the 140 grain bullet. All right. And I'm going to hold it here. Now, what I'm going to do too is I'm going to hold it next to, well, why not? This is one of the big boys that's on the market right now. In a 7mm is the 195 Burger. The 195 Burger is significantly longer. The diameter is bigger. There's a lot more traveling through the air. Okay. When we jump up, okay, look at the difference between, like, here's a Barnes. 180 grain Barnes, right? The overall length of them are relative, like it's almost the same, but the diameter of that Barnes is much bigger, right? Then you get into it too, where you really want to see this thing getting out there is this is what people will get into, is they think, oh, it'll shoot with everything. It'll stack up. So there is a 230 grain bullet sitting next to a 140 grain bullet. They're not apples to apples, guys. So the authority at which and the killing power of a potentially a larger diameter bullet versus the 6.5, will they both kill it? Absolutely. Okay. But let's think about too, where is the good intended range for that? This 140 grain bullet is excellent on deer you want to talk about 500-600 yards even, it will wallop deer, right? But I feel like that's kind of where you need to start really kind of like thinking through this whole thing if you want to take this out farther, because like, and then if I was going to say I'm going to do that, you might want to jump up to the 156 if you can push it. But a lot of times this thing doesn't have enough oomph to push this 156 grain bullet fast enough, right? So it gets into this thing too about like terminal performance. If you think about it, you have initial velocity of a given grain bullet, and then the maintained velocity at impact, right? And this is where BC starts coming into play, right? The ballistic coefficient of the bullet is the ability of the bullet to essentially slip through the air. It's the efficiency, right? So 143 grain bullet of a 6.5 Creedmoor is going to be a tear, like I said, up to like that mule deer and whatever. But just think through, if you really want to use that bullet on elk and that's your gun, okay, I get it. You don't have the ability to go buy something else and that's what you have. Pick the 143 grain ELDX bullet or 127 grain Barnes bullet, because the construction of those two bullets are going to stay together and you're not going to get this massive fragmentation. And those two bullets have the ability to push through or have to at least get into the thoracic cavity and do damage of an elk-sized game, because they're so much bigger than deer, right? When you get into that. And I know it's easy to hate on them too, but also too was like where people starting up hating on the Creedmoor piece is this is a 260 Remington. It's been around, right, for a while. It's been doing everything this guy's been doing with 100 feet per second faster since 1999, guys. It's just been doing it. What happened though was this guy had a marketing behemoth behind it called Hornady. Hornady did a great job. But now what they did in the design of it too was they optimize for a short action, right? Typically the same overall length of a 6.5 Creedmoor is 2.8 inches, right? Most short actions can only go up to about 2.95 to 2.99 inside the box, right? And if you're loading it inside of a detachable box bag, you're like 2.95 is it, sometimes 2.9, that's all you got, right? So when you start hand loading, like a 260 or something like that, you're maximizing all the case or you're running out of case. And that's where it gets into the piece too, where the 260 came out and Ryan had the question, he mentioned it too. It was twist rate, right? Like a lot of times these guns were not set up at the proper twist rate on the front end. And that's why calibers died throughout the years. The 264 Win Mag was doing this stuff in 1963. I mean, these things have been doing it. The 6.5 55 Swede's been doing it, right? So they're all in there. So I think of the 6.5 Creedmoor, the 260 Remington, the 6.5 284, and the 6.5 PRC. I kind of lump those calibers in kind of some pieces there together. And then I would say that if you were going to take one and you're going to be a real, like a Western, let's say deer hunter and with the occasional elk, pick the 6.5 PRC, okay? Just because it's going to push those heavier bullets much faster, and anymore, you're getting a much wider range of good available factory ammunition with heavy for caliber bullets. So, and then like what we're doing too is like right now is we're building a Wildcat off this 260. And this is where it gets really fun, is because we're calling it the 260 with more. It's completely tongue-in-cheek, right? So we're doing a 224, a 243, and a 260. So we're going to be able to get 6.5 284 performance out of this case. And so we'll probably end up easily start putting 300 to 350 feet per second over a 6.5 Creedmoor, both being able to function inside of like our actions. Because something else I didn't mention too is all of our actions are built with a Wyatt box mag. So if you do choose to reload, you can maximize the full potential inside that box, and you can stoke a fire behind it, right? So my goal for this was to do a 140 grain bullet around 3,000 feet per second, because I kind of like to live with my heavy for calibers right around 3,000 if I can with what I'm shooting. But if you can get 2,800 to 3,000 in those range for heavy for caliber, you're right there where you need to be. So,
Jared, I do have a question for you.
Yep.
Tyrell asked, do you build left-handed rifles? And if someone doesn't know what type of bullet they want, will you make recommendations?
Absolutely. Both. So yes, any model that we have is available in left hand. And we don't charge you any extra. So whatever it is, we are happy to build it. We've built left-handed rifles. Of course, I feel weird, when I go to the range with them, because I feel like I'm shooting backwards, but hey, whatever, I shoot them right-handed. Just so you know, when I go to the range. But no, we'll gladly do it. So we've done 308, I know for sure, one left-handed, and then we've got a 7 mag in process, and we've also done like 28 Nosler. Those are some of the ones that folks have wanted a left-handed, but we can do anything we do, we can do left-handed. Something else while I'm kind of on some of these caliber things too, and just talking through some bullets is, I mentioned the overall length, right? And all these cartridges from the factory are governed by, SAAMI. You hear me turn SAAMI, it's like SAAMI, but essentially that's the governing body that says that for all the cartridges, they have to fall within certain specs, right? So that was one thing that I didn't mention on the 6.5 Creedmoor versus some of the others. 6.5 Creedmoor was built with a higher PSI threshold than some of the other ones. So when you start looking at when you compare apples to apples and factory ammo, where they say, well, 6.5 Creedmoor can shoot with the 260 Remington. Well, yeah, at 6,000 higher PSI than the same thing, right? You stoke that other one up 6,000, it's beating it by another 100, 150 feet per second. So that's something to think about. When it comes to like factory ammo too, once again, you're going to see like a 300 Win Mag is going to have a bullet kind of stuck more down in the case, where, if I do a reload, like I can go, this one is like 3.34 inches. This one is 3.7 inches. So just food for thought there, like, the differences. So I think I've hit on it, some of the ones that I really like. I didn't pull one out, but I mean, there's nothing wrong with a 7 mag, right? There's nothing wrong with a 300 Win Mag. Don't fear the belt, okay? It's not your mom and dad chasing you, thinking they're gonna whoop you, okay? It's not the thing. The 300 Win, don't worry about those things, guys. Like the head spacing, all this other issues you hear people talking about with belted magnums. They feed fine, they extract fine, they're still accurate, right? You jump over to something more modern, like, I'm going out west with this guy this year. I'm taking my 28 Nosler, right? I really like it. And why am I shooting the 28 Nosler? It's because I used to shoot an Ultra Mag, and then I burned the barrel out. So it was already the same diameter case, whatever. So what I did was I just went with an Ultra Mag that allowed me to reload and put that much more bullet sticking out. So then I could basically build a giant powder column behind it, and then with some of mine, like this is the new 190 A tips. So this is what I've been doing doing long range practice with, and validation on, but these things are singing like at 3140 feet per second, right? So you're not going to get that from factory. And then like I shoot the 195 grain burgers. I think I'm at like 30, 70 feet per second, somewhere in the ballpark right there is where I'm shooting. And that's fast. You know what I mean? That's fast. And, but it hits with authority. It's got a little bit more bark to it. So yeah, I mean, we're gonna have a conversation, right, in builds and whatnot on what we like, what we just, what's gonna work. Ultimately, when we put something together, it's like our tagline says, it's a generational acquisition, right? We want to build things that you're gonna have pride in and that you're gonna hand down to like your kids, your nephew, your niece, whoever it is. We want those things to get passed down, right? You burn the barrel out someday. Hopefully it's my kids that are having to sit there and do the warranty thing on it that says, hey, my barrel burned out. I'm like, okay, we'll spin you up a new one and let's get rolling again, right? So hopefully that
Jared,
answers.
Stephen.
Yep.
Stephen did ask, is the 300 Win Mag still a viable, versatile round?
Oh, 100%. Like the reason why I say it's a viable, versatile round is, all right, so I've got laying down here on the floor, there's some 150 grain bullets, 180 grain bullets. There, you can get 215 burgers loaded up, like let's say in a normal time. You can go all the way up to 230. It will shoot anything from a 110 grain bullet up to a 250 grain bullet. Massively wide. The bullet selection is all over the place. And like I said, the availability of ammo. So don't fear it in that. One thing that we've made tweaks on our setups as well. So our tolerances on our 7 mags and 300 Win Mags are much tighter than SAMI. So what we've done is we've basically, if you can imagine, you've got like the diameter, the bullet going through, right? And you've got, so what we've done is if this is SAMI spec, we've shrunk everything down, like say much tighter. What that does is as the bullet leaves, there's sometimes you'll get what here as of a yaw. Let's say if it doesn't come out straight, and then it engages the rifling and has to start spinning. What we've done is we've taken down those tolerance levels to where like that bullet doesn't have that ability to yaw. It starts, you know what I mean? It's much tighter in there. So when it does catch, it's going in there much straighter. So those are pieces things that we've done, and we do it on all of our Wildcats and all that. But even on our factory, we do it to our 308s, you name it. Like we tighten things up to still allow you to shoot factory ammo. But yeah, as far as that goes, yeah, the 300 Win Mag is very viable. 7 mags very viable. The 300 PRC and the 28 Nosler, right? So if you want a little bit more the ability to stretch out, I would say that, and you don't think that you're going to sit down there and shoot massive strings or want to do a ton of target practice, right? Like all the time, then yeah, those are two very good rounds as well to think about. Another round that I kind of mentioned a little bit ago, but I'm kind of excited to, like I said, we got a build going, is this new 6.8 Western. I've always liked the 270 WSM case, especially for deer size game. Like I felt like the 130, 150 grain bullet in the 270s were just excellent, man. They're like lights out. And now jumping up to 165, 170 grain bullets, it's a viable elk round now, really. And what they've done there too is, it's like I said, they took the 270 WSM and they set the shoulder back and they shortened it a little bit, just allowed the bolt to be setting out farther. It's basically the same example as I just gave of the 260 Remington versus the 6.5 Creedmoor. Most modern cartridge designs that you're seeing these days follow those similar characteristics, in which you're seeing a bullet getting seated further out. Like this is our 300 Walker mag, and what we did was we took a 300 Win Mag case, we completely blew out the shoulders of it, we removed all the taper. So like you think of a 280 Ackley, right? How it's basically the cartridge is straight and then it has a quick shoulder angle. That's what we did here too, is we basically took the 300 Win Mag, we blew it out, gave it a 35-degree shoulder, and then I've got it set up to where like you're gonna see the bullets at around, I think, like I said, these may be 3.72, but 3.7 to 3.72. So I'm trying to maximize every bit of that box. Now this thing's shooting a 230 grain bullet at 2,900 feet per second. So I mean, that's to me, I feel like that's cooking along pretty good. And the BC of this bullet is 823. which is insane, right? So downrange, like, and I'm not going to say like I would ever do it, but this thing is still transonic, well past a mile, right? I'm still just cooking at a mile. Now, I'm not going to shoot that far, like, or I mean, I will practice out way far, right? Like, I love to see how far I can just, like, when I go out west or something like that, I love to go pick out rocks and just be like, how far is that? Range it and shoot it for practice just to see. My you know, I feel like everybody has to have their own internal measures of which is right for them, right? And I feel like that's something you need to practice and know what your number is. I don't want to have somebody come down and browbeat somebody because they're like, why are you shooting something at 500 yards? And I'm like, well, that guy may practice every day at 1,000, and the 500 is a chip shot to them, right? But like that person that never shoots past 100 or 200 yards and then tries to shoot 500, maybe you should try to close the distance a little bit, right? So I think we all just need to kind of look at where everyone is on the spectrum and then just, look at it that way. So just a little food for thought. Everybody's in different boats.
Jared, Jason asked, talking about burning out barrels a little bit, and is it really a concern?
From hunting? No. Here's my example. I'm going to grab a calculator real quick. Okay, I want to take a barrel burner. I just mentioned it. I took a 7 rum. Okay. I scorched that barrel. Okay. I drove it hard and I burned it out in like 500 rounds. Okay. But it was a fire breathing dragon. I was shooting fast. Okay. I was shooting 162 grain bullets at 3450 feet per second. And I was shooting 180 grain bullets at like 3250 to 3300. That's fast. Okay. That's a lot of power going down that barrel. It looked like Death Valley. Okay. So, but let's just look at this. A Creedmoor, I don't see why you couldn't get 2,500, 2,600 rounds through one of those barrels. A 6.5 PRC, 1,400. A 28 nozzler, I could still see, depending on how hard you run one. Let's say like you did it fast, 800 rounds. Okay, let's take 800 divided by 20. When was the last time you put 40 boxes of ammo through your gun? You know what I mean? Do you do that in a given season, right? Like 40 boxes at today's rate, right? Let's just say with good quality ammo. Well, if you're shooting a 28 nozzler at, let's say, I'm just going to be generous, $65 a box. It cost you $2,600 to burn that barrel out. Okay. That's what you spent burning it out. And then people get all kind of like bent sideways when they're like, I don't want to burn my barrel out. Okay, guys, for let's just say 600 bucks, brand new carbon fiber barrel that's already spun up and ready to go again, and you're hunting again. And here's go spend another $2,600 burning out your barrel, right? So in reality, let's think about this. Like most folks will never burn out a barrel in most given lives. Like a 308, it's probably going to be your grandkids that burn that barrel out. I'm just going to be honest, unless you are going to sit there shooting hot at a range, shooting 10, 20 round strings. Okay. And that's mostly match people that do that. And match people burn 4 to 5 barrels out in a season. They also shoot 10,000 rounds. Okay. So that's just a normal concern. I look at barrels kind of like tires or oil in your car. It's the least expensive thing on the whole thing, and it's the consumable piece of it. So if you burn one out, don't go get another rifle, just get a new barrel. And the great thing is too, is like new barrels give you new life. Okay. Because you can take something that was, sorry, Jim, you're up again. Okay. This Jim's gun, okay, had a big, heavy profile barrel. Okay. His gun was like, I think it was like 11 pounds. Okay. It was heavy, right? It was junk. And we put it on a diet, right? So now Jim's gun, like scoped out now, I mean, it was before I put a screw, you know what I mean? It's heavy. It's like 11, 12 pound gun. He's now in like I think it's 10 something, 10 and a half, like scoped out now, right? Just by changing the barrel. It also changed the balance point of his rifle, right? So whereas like before, when you would shoulder it, it had a tendency to want to kind of go down. Now you've got more of a general, like a balance point, right? Where I'm holding it. So then I could actually get behind this rifle and I could sit here. If something's moving through, I could actually stay on this in the timber and stay comfortably on it for a while. That is one of the pieces too that I've really found why I love these carbon fiber barrels, is because the balance point starts getting back closer to the recoil lug area, more towards the center of the rifle. So hope that kind of, I mean, like I said too, most folks aren't going to burn them out. If you're shooting PRS and if you want to build a rig for PRS, then I'm going to suggest that we do stainless steel barrels and we spin you up 2 or 3 of them. Is what that's, you know, because you're going to put thousands and thousands of rounds down that barrel, you know, shooting competition. But for hunters, no, I wouldn't give it too much of a concern. Are there any other questions, Austin?
No, that's everything in the chat. Do you want to just open it up?
I say we open it up. I mean, we've got, you know, let's say 45 minutes left, but there was a lot of the stuff that I kind of wanted to hit. I just kind of hit as we were, you know, kind of going through the flow.
I'm going to open it up then. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself now. Jared, I do have one question for you. Courtney and I are looking to probably go out to Wyoming antelope hunting in the next year or so. Any recommendations on a cartridge? You're muted. Sorry.
You muted me. No, just joking. So, you want? This is one of those ones, like my favorite, and gosh, my favorite round for deer and especially antelope is the 257 Weatherby. The reason why I say that is the quarter bores, they're just made for that 100 to 110, 115 grain bullet. And you're going to be shooting that bullet at 3,600 feet per second, you know, in that ballpark. And they're laser beams, especially with antelope, because you're getting out there and like the way they kind of do their thing, you know, they'll sprint, right? However far, but like they're, you know, if you spook them or whatnot. But I just feel like that's the quintessential Western antelope deer, mule deer round, right? Now I'm going to get into that if you hand load and if you can find ammo, right? That's the hard part about the 257 Weatherby. Like it was one of my favorite deer rounds that I've ever hunted with. I've dropped probably more deer lights out with that round than any other round that I've probably, outside of the 308. I'd say probably, you know, but the 257 is such a good one. Now, these days, where I might lean is more like a 6.5 PRC that I mentioned earlier, just because such a good round, honestly, as far as like doing what you're mentioning there too. What Ryan mentioned, honestly, a 708, 260, you know, like something like that, that's still got enough zip if you're loading it right. Especially for antelope. Antelope aren't as tough, right? It doesn't take as much to get them down. So another piece too is if you've got a 270 in the closet, you should consider just taking it and shoot a 130 grain bullet. I mean, I'd love to sell you a new gun all day, but let's be honest, like 130 grain and a 270 on an antelope it's going to work very well. If you got a 30-06, like, I mean, I think you have a 300 Win Mag, right?
No, so we both shoot for deer rifles. We both shoot at 6.
Okay, yeah. So with the 30-06, I believe, I'm trying to think from a factory ammo standpoint, this is where I would consider dropping down in your weight, right, of the bullet, where you might not gonna want to go as heavy, you're probably not gonna be taking a crazy first shot anyways. But if you're wanting something faster, right? So this is where I'm going to lean more towards construction of the bullet, like a ballistic tip type bullet, right? If you want to do that. If you are going to shoot a Barnes, I would shoot a, or a solid copper, I would shoot a lighter one, just so you get a little bit more velocity behind it. That's kind of where I would lean. But
Okay.
some of the other things too, like I didn't hit on, but easy ways for accurizing, right? Triggers, right? Triggers, bedding. There's a lot of things you can do to take your rifles to the next level without going full blown custom. If you got a Remington trigger that's got one of the X-Mark Pros, I would say just look at getting a trigger tech for 125 to 140 bucks, knocking that thing out, sticking a trigger tech in there. The creep, as far as like you're probably going to become more accurate just shooting it, just having a better trigger, honestly. And then bedding, making sure that guns have a good solid bedding job with a good trigger, free float your barrel. Something I was thinking about too that I didn't mention is let's say you got a gun it should shoot better than what it's doing, right? Or it's kind of finicky. It's what this came in. It's just like a little kit here, but it's called a that one's a TMS kit. I'm trying to remember, but basically it's sold by David Tubbs, and it's a fire lapping kit that you basically run through, and you can buy ammo if it's a 30, some of the common cartridges, right? And what you do is you go from a heavy grit, basically impregnated bullet, and you shoot it however many times and you clean it. And then what you end up doing is you're working down to a much finer grit. And then by the end, you're shooting a nitride coated bullet. I did this on 2 different guns, took an example because I wanted to see like how well it worked. I took 2 Model 700 long ranges, one in 7 mag and one in 300 Win Mag. I lined them both in. I then shot 3 shot groups with good, both of them I shot Hornady Precision Hunter ammo in, okay? Just because there was good ammo for what it is. Both usually shoot very well in most guns. Both of them were consistently around 1 inch, okay? I then did the 50 shot sequence to go through this thing. Shoot, clean, shoot, clean. I mean, I did this whole thing through 50 shots. Once I had this thing buttery clean, I went back, basically shot my Fowler shot. I then shot both guns 1/2 inch with the exact same ammo that I started with. So just by doing that fire lapping kit, I cut the level in half. So that's just something to think about, is before you go crazy doing some of this, there might be some options out there to help you before you just start going down a bunch of rabbit holes. You may have a gun that carbon fouls quickly, right? So that might be one where let's just say that when they were cutting the chamber, it could have had some chatter to it, right? You've got some groove marks in the machining marks and things like that. Like all guns have machining marks, right? Like when you're finishing on mine, and that's the portion of the break-in, is you're basically rounding those machining marks off the lens and the grooves inside the rifle, right? Once you go through that process, essentially what you're doing is you're basically you're fire lapping to a better quality grade barrel. That's what you're doing. So food for thought.
So like right now out of my @6, just for general deer, I'm running a Barnes Vortex at I think 168 grain. If I drop down to like that 150 class, is that gonna, or do I need to go lower for that if I'm gonna go out antelope hunting? Or
I'll be honest, Austin, if that gun likes it, don't change a dang thing. You know what I mean? Okay. And if it likes it, you're gonna you'll pick up some velocity, right, with the 150 if you can find them. I'm trying to think on the 30 calibers too when you drop down to the Barnes, but I think it drops a little bit further down too as far as like weight wise. I think when you drop, and if it were hand loaded, but I don't know with the 30-06. I'm not as familiar on it as far as like the factory availability on with the barn specifically. You're in the wheelhouse of the do all at where you are right now. You've got ideally, I think for your cartridge, one of the most ideal setups, because the 165 grain can easily take an elk. It could take a moose with the setup that you have, right? It could take deer, whatever. So I honestly feel like you've probably got the ideal setup, and I wouldn't really change much, dude, to be honest. As long as it likes and you can shoot it well and be comfortable with it, roll with it.
And I will say those barns, I know a lot of people poo-poo the solid coppers, and man, those things are just nasty. I
very soon I'm about to make a purchase because I want to take, and I do want to try, and I'm not going to make the total switch, right? But I want to try more on the solid coppers. I really wanted to find the 200 grain barns for the 30 calibers, for the bigger ones. But I think I'm going to get some of the hammer bullets out of Montana. They make a 199 grain hammer. And they're CNC machined, each one on a, like, they're just super cool. They've got deep grooves, right? Like the barns do. And I've heard that you can get some pretty wicked velocities with some of those things too from hand loads. So I want to try it in my 300 because my favorite bullet in my 300 is the 215 grain Burger, and if I can go to that, I guess here's where my head is. I want to be able to shoot, yes, cutting edge. That's the other one. Cutting edge bullets or hammer bullets, right? Either one of those are the two that I've been looking at going back and forth on. I want to have the ability to put a bullet through an elk shoulder. And that's where, like, if I want to take the high shoulder shot and I've got something creeping out and I need to anchor it, I want to have the ability to anchor it. And that's kind of where I'm going to. Like, I think of the same thing on, like, it could be a mule deer, it could be a sheep, it could be whatever. If I need to take the high shoulder shot and take it out, I want that thing to just buckle that animal right there. That's the beauty of a solid copper. Mm-hmm. So, and I feel too, like, we'll see where it goes, right? Where the landscape goes. But I feel that we're going to see more and more, around the solid coppers. But I think as it gets pushed, if it becomes to where, like, more legislation tells us we have to go that route, it's a supply and demand type thing as well, right? I feel like the market will eventually carry that, and then prices will come down over time as things become more readily available. So I don't get to where, because right now they're twice as expensive. Influencers of suppressors on long distance accuracy. Suppressors should not affect anything. Honestly, too, some guns may do better with a suppressor versus not. Suppressors too with the gases, right? It's doing the exact same thing as a muzzle brake. It's just doing it all inside of a can, right? And the gases that are escaping. One of these days I'm going to get one too. I haven't done my paperwork, but I want to kind of experiment doing some with the can. If you do want to run a can, think about the length of your barrel, right? And what type of contour of your barrel. If you've got a skinny, like a skinny barrel, like you see on some of the Kimber Mountain Ascents and something like that, right? I could see that it working good on, say, like a 308 size, but the 300 Win Mag ones, right? Sometimes they can throw them off, right? As far as a couple inches you've seen, and then they may settle. But if you plan on running your can, zero with the can and don't take it off, because you're probably going to have point of impact shifts running with and without the can. So if you've got a gun that'll hit pretty close to both right on, then you're pretty lucky, I would say, going that route. But it should not affect you from long range at all. I'm going to throw the chat up here on the side. Bringing out barrels. Oh, there we go. I just saw it. His was 11.6. So, all right. Do some gun barrels like certain bullets? Yes. It's the weirdest thing. Just like having kids. Not all kids like eating, certain things. I don't know what it is. Like you'll get a gun and it's worked in everything else, and you just be like, why is this not working? You make a switch on a bullet, and it's just like harmony. But I'm trying to think what it was. Oh, I remember. I wanted to really want to shoot, and I wanted to like them so well. The 225 grain ELDM bullets in my 300. I wanted those things to shoot so darn bad. But it just, and I've messed with seeding, and I mean, I was chasing the rabbit, right? But I just couldn't quite get it versus like the amount of powder I was burning in a pandemic time thing to get an accurate thing. I was like, I gave up on it, and I went back to some of my tried and true bullets. But I'll chase some rabbit holes. But yeah, another example was I had a 22-250 that I wanted to shoot the 53 grain BMAX in. It wouldn't shoot it. I mean, it shot good, but then it just would lose stability. And next thing you know, I was keyholing bullets. They're going into the target sideways. So then I jumped up to a 55 grain Nosler ballistic tip, and it was like I was putting bullets to the same holes. I'm like, guess I could have been shooting that the entire time. Let's see here. I know Ryan, you put it in there too, cutting edge. Yes. I really want to try to find, on this copper thing, but like I intend on trying, if it were a given non-crazy world right now where I could have all three side by side and I had the availability to test, I would take, and for some of the ones I would load, I would 80 Barnes triple stock, 200 grain Barnes LRX, a 196 hammer, a 199 hammer. The two, I'm trying to think what they are, the 190s, the 190 MHT from Cutting Edge, and I would stack them all up against each other, and just I've had to learn over time to not be so personal about it and just go with what the gun likes. And I know it seems weird, but you want something to work so well, but sometimes you just have to go with what it likes.
All right, Jared, so I got one for you. So me being a typical Michigan whitetail hunter, I do a lot of my rifle hunting in the UP. So, I mean, most of my shots are within 100 yards. I haven't done a lot of long range shooting. Any recommendations or tips just to kind of get a little more distance out of myself?
Yeah. Here's one thing I want to do. I've got my safe open just because I got stuff here. Okay. A 17 HMR. Okay. The reason why I say that, take a 17 or a 22 mag. And the reason why I say this is super cheap. Try shooting this at 100 yards over and over and over again. Okay. And it's about fundamentals more than it is the reach. Okay. Because it's the trigger control, it's the muscle memory, it's all the things that go into it. It's not always the gun and all the ammo and everything else. It's, you could take a gun that's completely capable of shooting a half MOA group at 1,000 yards, but if you don't know how to shoot it, it's a pile. It doesn't mean anything. I got to where like I started shooting a lot with a 17 because I could go buy however many and have 50 of them, and I can shoot this thing all day long, right? And just get used to it. And what I did too was I went prairie dog hunting, and I learned a lot about shooting in the wind, right? And what wind does to these small bullets, because at 100 yards in Michigan, shooting with our wind sometimes, especially, you know how it is when the gales blow, but I mean, like, it can throw this thing all over the place, and you'd be surprised how much it does it. So if you got a place to do that, put this, and then like a little steel spinner target, try shooting the decreasing diameter steel spinners, stick them out there at 50, 70, 100 yards, and then try to can do that over and over again. Like I said, put a bipod on something like that. If you got a 22, you can do it with the 10-20. I don't, just something, but usually the bolt action 17s and 22 mags are a little bit more accurate, right? So that would just be, a suggestion on trying to do that. But you've got areas where you can get out. I have to get really creative, just like you, Austin, because like living in Michigan, don't have a lot of spots. But if there's areas where you can get out, let's say national, I have some spots up north that I go to, right, where I'll go shoot. And I might be able to stretch out for, a few hundred yards, right? I'm super fortunate in the fact that like I have 1,000-yard range in Arkansas. Okay, so when I go back and we do stuff and I'm doing bullet testing and develop, like verifying stuff, I usually make a few trips back a year, and I'm shooting out to 1,000 yards, right? Not everybody has that. I believe on the west side of the state there's a range that goes out to 1,000. So and then here down in the southeast, I know that like Peacemakers or Oakland Tactical was working on trying to get a range that was at like either 800 or 1,000. So they're it's not happening, but they were trying to get it pushed through. There's been some pushback, I think, is what was going on. Like people were not happy about it, but I don't know if it's ever going to happen or not. So you got to get creative. Otherwise, you got to drive a few hours, to find something. Steel. I honestly think too that like there's a mental aspect of shooting steel. It's the instant gratification, because when you shoot paper, you have no idea what the flip you're doing until you shoot and you drive out there, and then you're bewildered. Where was it? I thought I was hitting right on. You know what I mean? And then you end up chasing yourself, like, so that's where it gets kind of frustrating.
So you got another one in there in the chat. Is there a noticeable difference in accuracy between shooting a bolt action versus a semi-auto?
Yes. Here's I'll give an example. I sold an AR to go buy a bow one time because I got so aggravated with it. I'm so used to shooting like, I guess like bolt action rifles. The difference is like you got gas. It's the gases, I feel like, too, right? Bolt action wise, and a lot of AR, let's say like semi-auto ammo. If I kind of going towards the AR style, but to run through some of that stuff, it's how's the best way to say it? It's more universal, and they're not typically as accurate. You can get very accurate semi-auto rifles, but it comes at a cost typically, and especially when you see them in AR style, they are bull barrel. They've got a lot, they're free floated, like, you're basically nothing's touching. It's set up the same way you would like an accurate, long range setup. It's the components, once again, it gets into the components that you're putting inside your semi-auto, right? But if you're talking a Remington Woodsmaster 7400 or a Browning bar, it's still potentially pie plate of accuracy, okay? And just know that you may shoot 3-inch groups. That's the way those guns were always built, right? They were guns that we all grew up with, shooting brush guns or whatever.
Probably in like AR-10s, shooting 308s and stuff. Spend some real money, you can get something that's super accurate, right?
Exactly right. And most of the ones that I've seen are super accurate are just that, because the 308s typically are set up with match grade bullets, right? So you're shooting a Sierra Match King bullet. It's once again, it's the setup, right? And that's what you get into. You know what? There's a couple other ones too, like, and honestly, like, I'm glad that Ryan's on too. Is like, 450, 350s, right? Pieces like that. Yeah, a lot of us, we're in Michigan, right? We have to kind of deal with those things. But I've been really impressed with the 450, right? I got burned. I'll be real honest. I got burned last year shooting muzzleloader, had a misfire, right? and missed a doe at 50 yards when it just pow, 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 did one of my wonderful little things. And I got aggravated and went and bought a 450, and man, that thing shoots pretty darn well, So on the 450 front, I've had a couple people reach out to me about building 450s and 350s, and I don't want to like turn them away, but at the same time, like I have a hard time trying to justify putting all that into one of these rounds that you might be okay just getting by with the Ruger American or the Mossberg Patriot, really, or a CBA that's got one of the those things shoot well too. So those are things.
Yeah, look, if I was gonna make a Michigan deer rifle for the southern zone, I'd probably make, I'd go something that's sort of wildcat, like the Raptor. Yeah.
Exactly.
Where you're essentially a chamberable 460. Something that'll actually cycle.
Yep, I'm with you. I'm the same thing. Like I kind of wish they'd make the 450 in a lever action. I mean, I haven't seen it done yet. My dad and I are talking about it. I'm like, man, I wish they'd have a Winchester lever action with a 450. To me, that would just be like one of the coolest little.
I know you can get
Savage Model 99 and 450.
There you go.
I know you can get let's see here. I can't remember. Somebody was making the 460 in lever action, like a custom one, high-end lever action rifle. I know you can get it in 44 Casull too.
Yeah. I've actually got a lever action 308. I mean, I've got a model 88 pre-64 Winchester that I called the meat gun. I mean, that's what it is. Let's see, what else was there in there, Austin, that we were trying to hit on? I mean, we got about 20 minutes here.
No, man, I think you nailed everything pretty hard. Guys, if you have any questions, go ahead and feel free to unmute yourself and ask them or throw them in the chat.
450 is definitely an 800-yard gun.
Absolutely.
So Ryan, I was messing around with my shooter app, and a lot of times what I do with my shooter apps is I've got whatever bullet that I'm messing with in the cartridge, and I'm trying to look at messing with okay, what is this thing dropping at like 1,000, like 1,000 elevation, 5,000, 8,000, 10,000. And I think I had something plugged in for like Montana, and I was like at 7,500 feet. And then I clicked on the 450. I was like, you know what? I got to do it, because it's just like it's freaking hilarious, right? So I'll take my 450 Bushmaster with my load, right? So I'll change the elevation, right? So I'll go to so I'll be probably around 7,500 Montana this year, right? I was like, well, what's it gonna do at 1,000 yards? As I was looking at my gun that's got 21 minutes of adjustment at 1,000 yards, right? And I plugged it in, and the 450 Bushmaster has 92.6 minutes of adjustment. And I'm like, holy smoke.
So what you're saying is there's a chance.
What you're saying is if you can take your gun and click it 370 clicks, you can get there.
What's the energy like? Less than a 22?
350 foot-pounds of energy.
That's more than what I thought it would.
It's only because it's at 7,500 feet elevation. It's going 795 feet per second. Now, if you were to try to do that, let's just go here in Michigan, just for fun. 115 minutes of elevation, and you're going 698 feet per second with 270 foot-pounds. I'm pretty sure you could punch me 270 foot-pounds. Oh, man. Well, yeah, guys, we hit a bunch of stuff. I mean, hopefully the flow was okay. like I said, whoever's out there, everybody is more than willing to come off mute and ask me anything you want, and I'll try to answer it.
Jared, Jim,
Hey.
what are we looking at time frame?
on yours, I within well, you're probably within the next you're less than 1 week out.
Oh, okay. October's not far away.
I know. That's why, like, your cousin Ron is like, I don't know if you can see here, but there's all this stuff on the counter. There's bins over here that are labeled Jim and others that are labeled Ron's. And then I've got stacks of ammo here that are like, you've got a thing, he's got a thing, and then all these different powder and bullets are like, they're about to get dumped, and there's about to be a lot of powder getting dumped. I've got, and just so you know, I've got one final thing with yours and his is I think I told you, like, I had to like switch powders, right? So I was going back and looking. I've got to shoot a few. So what I'm also doing too with yours is I'm running simultaneously another load, so that way you don't have to burn out all your Barnes bullets. I'm loading up some 178 grain ELDX bullets, so that way you can do some practicing and not burn up all your, Barnes stuff. And I'm trying to have it at a velocity that's equal to your Barnes load. So that way I'm trying to get you in the ballpark to where both of them are hitting the same. So I'm trying to get it to where, like, if you need to practice stuff, here's a cheaper alternative for your practice. And then your cousin, I'm basically got him to where, like, I've found two very good accurate nodes. And this is what I do too, guys. Like, when I go through the process is like, I'm basically doing ladder tests. I'm shooting all the way through to figure out like accuracy and velocity, right? So I have a node on Ron's at between 80, 85 and 85.5 grains, where it's like super tight. I literally, like, I mean, I put basically 5 shots almost in the same hole, right? On that one gun. And then what I'm going to do is go back out with 85.3 grains is what I'm basically going to do to try to hit the middle and zero the gun at 85.3, because I'm trying to hit the middle part of that node, because when I go to the next half grain up, I notice the velocity comes up again. So what I'm trying to do is hit that middle part of the node to the lower. But I think if I stay right in there, same thing with yours, like yours is there, yours is still shooting 0.4. Like, I'm just going to tell you, like, right now, like, your gun's shooting 0.4 MOA. But
well, we got time between now and 24 when I go to Alaska to get it a little closer than that.
Right. So, like, you could go out right now, but the problem is, like, and I guess this is where it's like you're shooting a 180 grain bullet at 2850, okay, which isn't going crazy fast, but it's still going, you know what I mean? Versus, like, my goal was to have you around 3,000 feet per second with 180, right? 2950 to 3,000. But you're off by like 100 feet per second right now. So I could load you up everything right now. Like, you're gone. I know you've got a node that works very well, right? And an elk's probably not going to know the difference between the 100 feet per second. I can tell you right now.
No,
so,
probably not.
So I could have you like literally rolling and going, so just depends on which way you want to go. I could have it for you this weekend if we want to do the other thing and not chase the other thing. So,
well, I appreciate it.
Yeah, man. No,
I just had to harass you a little bit.
No, I know, I get it, but and the same time too, I feel like I've got to know you. I've got to know Ron. Like, this is the whole piece too that I enjoy about doing this, is like I get to learn and like meet so many cool people doing this stuff, and like living vicariously through the trips that you guys get to go on too, and and see it happening.
Well, and I could say anyone that's curious, that you have, like when you started with talking about the questions you walked everybody through, you have been more than accommodating to answer our questions through this process, because obviously this is our first custom guns that him and I have built, and you've done more than enough to make sure we understood what we were doing, why you were doing it, and what the process was to get there. So we appreciate that.
Yeah, and I mean, I said, like, I sweat the details, but like I'm at the point of splitting hairs right now, right? So like you could go out right now and kill whatever, and it's just like, how far do you want to do it?
Right.
So
cool.
Thanks,
man.
Jared, I have a quick question.
Yeah.
So you talked about like, and you showed the statistics for the 450 Bushmaster, which is obviously crazy. But so if we sight in, like, say we're in the eastern part of the United States,
Yep.
and we're shooting a rifle, we're getting it sighted in, say a 300 Win Mag at 180 grains, moving, 2950, 3000. What are we going to see if we go out west and we're now at 9,000 feet as opposed to, say, 750?
So part of the sweating that I do with everybody is I try to get them as accurate as I can. And I build for everybody a range card. Okay. I get your velocity and I start at 1,000 feet because that's roughly around kind of like where we are in Michigan, right? And then I say, like, what do you think you're going to hunt or where are you going to go? But what I've found is I can capture most things. Like, this is one that I did at a 28 Nosler, 195 Burger at 22 feet per second. And I did 1,000, 3,500, 8,000, 10,000, and 12,000 feet elevation. So I was trying to cover everything. But I mostly did this one based off of Colorado. If you were going to hunt Montana more or something else, I would maybe tweak the 3,500. I would do 3,000, 5,000, 7,500, and 10,000 because you're typically not going to top out like in Montana more than that. Colorado, you'll top out more, right? And that's the way I would build the range card. I go all the way out to like however far, like I just happen to have room on this one. I built this card. I'm not going to shoot that one. I did it all the way to 1,400 yards, right? But here's a real world example. I will tell you at here, if I were to shoot this gun, it would have 20 minutes of adjustment at 1,000 yards. When I go to 8,000 feet, it's 18.3 minutes. And when I go to 12,000, it's 17.6. Okay. So that's 2.5 minutes at 1,000 yards. That's 25 inches of difference. Okay. Only difference is air density and elevation. That bullet's still traveling 3,022 feet per second. It's just that the density and the drag at which is coming again, the force against the bullet, it is that much more efficient at higher, less dense air than it is in more dense air. So don't think, this is why I tell folks, unless you're hell bent on it, don't buy one of those turrets that's engraved to that one load, because you're going to be thoroughly disappointed when you go out there and that bull pops out at 500 yards and you shoot a foot over its back. So that's what's going to happen unless you've got something else that you can run simultaneously that does it. And I mean, I've spent a lot of money now to try to get things that, like the Kestrel, an atmospheric like rangefinder. Like I've invested in things to where, like, I don't want to be able to think. I've had bulls dang near walk away, or like I've struggled to try to get all the adjustments in the moment, like ranging, doing the calculations, doing all the other stuff, and something's feeding through, and I dang near missed the opportunity on that, right? I've seen them walk out of the picture to never come back again, versus range and immediately there it is and let's go, right? That's why this thing is handy. I tell people to like put it in your rangefinder with your rangefinder, right? Put it literally right here on you, because you need to be able to go boom, boom, and look at it, right? I want to range, and it goes, how far is that? And I'll make the step changes, like if you want it 10 yards or 25 yards, and I'll make the step changes in those increments. So that way, boom, something pops out like 350 yards, 2.9, go to 3, set it on 3, pull the trigger, and you could, boom, do it like that. And that's what you need to do. But those are the things that you practice with. But I want to give everybody the most, the best tools that I can do sitting here that'll allow them to be successful in the field.
Jared, what's the best way? I think we're probably pretty close to wrapping up. What's the best way if somebody wants to get a hold of you or
Yep.
Best place to find you.
I mean, you can get hold of me. There's a couple different ways. I got a couple email addresses. Flint Ridge Rifles at gmail.com or sales@flintridgerifles.com. Either one of those I'll get, right? My Instagram, Flint Ridge Rifles there. I think it's Flint_Ridge_Rifles. My phone number, I don't care. Call me, text me. It's 517-304-4793. I would rather you give me a call, even if we don't sell you a rifle, just to kind of talk through stuff. If you're on the fence or whatever it is, but like, I'm happy to talk through this stuff. I'm passionate about it. And I just want people to be successful. I feel like we owe it to the game to be the best that we can be. And we got to do our part. And I just want to help in that. Good stuff.
Well, man, I appreciate you coming on and doing this with us.
Absolutely.
Hope everybody had fun and learned a bunch. I know I did.
Well, whenever we have a Michigan rendezvous, I will gladly do something there.
Awesome. We appreciate it, man.
Cool. Thank you, guys.
Thanks everybody for coming out. Thanks for putting this together, Austin and Jared.
Yep. Appreciate
Not
it.
a problem.
Thanks, Austin. Thanks, Jared.
Yep. Cheers.
All right. If nobody else has anything else, thanks guys for coming out, and hopefully we'll see you back here again sometime.
All right.
Jared, hang on for a second.
Yep.